So another topic that I get asked about repeatedly, not about the ketogenic diet, but about different drugs that may be calorie mimetics or maybe adjuvants to the ketogenic diet, and actually found that the drug Metformin, I have not used Metformin in a long time, but it was probably about 3 or 4 years ago. I did 4 months of Metformin, working up to 2,500 milligrams, I think, for the last month. And that was like the tolerability limit if I had any more than that. And I think I spread that out with 3 doses, 2 or 3 doses per day. And I will say that every biomarker of metabolic health really improved with Metformin. I think I was a little bit stricter with my diet back then, and maybe started to do some intermittent fasting too. So maybe it was a calorie restriction effect. But I would say a big topic that is of interest to me and many people out there, aside from longevity and aging, and that's another thing we can get into, is physical and maybe psychological, mental health and performance while you're taking Metformin. I felt that I was more calm when you haven't taken Metformin yet, so maybe you can try it and we can, get some. But I did feel that Metformin decreased high intensity exercise, or my ability to sustain high intensity exercise, squats, for example, or deadlifts deadlifts or bent over rows in the higher rep ranges. I started to get dizzy, and I never had that before. I stopped Metformin, and that went away. I started Metformin again to do a trial, and the dizziness came back, only at the higher intensity levels. So I was trying to figure out why this was happening, because I was convinced it was a very real effect. One potential side effect of Metformin is lactic acidosis. So there's evidence to suggest that Metformin may be decreasing hepatic gluconeogenesis and may consequently be reducing the Cori cycle. So the lactate that we're producing during high intensity exercise may not be effectively converted back to glucose. And I felt that, and maybe actually running a little bit acidotic. I didn't measure at the time, I didn't have a blood lactate meter, but I think if I was to do the experiment over again, which I'm planning on doing, I'm going to measure my blood lactate levels under periods of high intensity anaerobic work. And I felt that that was a major, for me, that was a sign that, it was having a negative health consequence. If I can't increase, if I can't do a maximal intensity set of bent over rows or deadlifts or squats or something, that's sort of non-negotiable, it's not acceptable to me. But it could have been a dose thing too. So at the time, it happened midway through my 3 to 4 month cycle of Metformin, but it was a very real effect. And I also started getting some ringing in the ears too, like tinnitus. And I never had that before, and since I stopped, and that could have been blood pressure, acidosis, something. So I have to go, I did a lot of blood work, but I didn't actually measure lactate or the things I think Metformin could have been affecting. So you get questions, Metformin too? I mean, through the website, your nutrition website maybe? I get a lot through my emails.
But is this supported? Yeah. This is supported in the literature.
Yeah.
Decrease in performance.
It is. So recently, I think there was a couple studies, and Peter Attia referenced them, I believe. One was aerobic, another was maybe a weightlifting or a resistance exercise study. I have to go back and look at it. But I know Metformin is classically associated with the potential for lactic acidosis. And I think it makes sense that you're putting your body under metabolic demands that will contribute to metabolic acidosis. And if you have an impairment of gluconeogenesis through inhibiting the hepatic pathways that are associated with gluconeogenesis, which Metformin may be doing, probably more so in other individuals, in some individuals than others, And I think that may be attributed to some of the effects I was getting.
And what if you're in ketosis?
Yeah.
And would you experience, is this like a hypoglycemic thing, or because you're lowering the hepatic gluconeogenesis?
Yeah, my glucose never went. I did have higher ketone levels. The highest ketone levels I ever had on a day-to-day basis were highest when using metformin. So, and independent of diet, I kept my diet pretty consistent, prior to using metformin. And when I added metformin to a diet that I kept very consistent, my glucose levels may have went down. I think they didn't really change that much, but my ketone levels started to go up a little bit more. So I noticed that. And yeah, I went up to 2,500 milligrams per day. I did try 3,000 milligrams per day, but my GI, I just could not tolerate it. But yeah, I think there's a bit of a debate now about metformin potentially impairing the adaptive response to exercise. And we know that metformin is mimicking some of the effects of calorie restriction. We know that it's suppressing inflammation. Metformin does potentially decrease reactive oxygen species, although in our model systems, we actually show that it can increase reactive oxygen species, depending on the system that you're looking at. But I think that metformin is playing a role in dampening or attenuating the adaptive response to exercise. That's my speculation, and I don't know, I haven't read into the studies enough what the authors attribute the decrease in exercise performance, but I think that's a potential thing. And if you can't exercise at a high intensity, then that may be, attenuating the adaptive benefits that you get from exercise.
Okay. Stay tuned for his next experiment.
Yes.